Hi, I'm Pat DeVera with the Asian Association of Firefighters.
I'm firefighter Joseph Herrera on behalf of the Fairfax County LGBTQ employee group.
I'm Captain Felicia Barnes on behalf of the Progressive Firefighters of Fairfax County.
I'm Technician Alyssa Vance on behalf of the Fairfax County Women's Firefighters Association.
I'm Ron Cooley, President of the Fairfax County Professional Firefighters and Paramedics, IAFF Local 2068.
I'm Dr. Stewart on behalf of the Public Safety Occupational Health Center.
Captain George Gonzalez with the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department's Hispanic Firefighters Association.
I'm Battalion Chief Todd Gorham, Health Programs, on behalf of WellFit.
I am Jim Hedrick on behalf of the Fairfax County Volunteers.
I am Battalion Chief Jerome I. Williams, and on behalf of the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Training Academy.
I'm Greg Hunter, President of the Fairfax County Professional Fire and Rescue Officers Association. We support
the
2019 Fairfax County
Fire and Rescue Department Safety Stand Down
and a comprehensive plan
to reduce our exposure
to occupational cancers.
Thank you for tuning in to the next part of our presentation. Over the next few slides, we're going to try to provide you with some statistical data on our occupational cancer risk exposure. We're going to talk about some of the things we do well and where we go from here. In this first slide, it talks about cancer being the most dangerous threat to firefighter health and safety. There's a couple statistics here. The first one that jumps out to me is cancer caused 70% of all career firefighter line of duty deaths in 2017. That's an alarming number that we're watching very closely, and we have to work to reduce that number. Another one is the firefighters have a 14% higher risk of dying from cancer than the general U.S. population. In this slide, we're going to talk about cancer rates directly related to Fairfax County employees, career and volunteer since 2004. From the numbers we were able to get from Corvell, we were able to determine that throat cancer accounted for 7% of all, prostate was 25%, breast 9%, skin 7%, and leukemia 5%. There were 56 cases in this time frame since 2004. 46 were male and 10 were female. The median age for employees who were getting a cancer claim or filing a cancer claim was 57 years of age. The most important part of this slide, I think, is to look at the two time frames from 2004 to 2011 versus 2012 to 2018. During that time, cancer claims, compensatory claims are up 173.33%. Here's some general numbers based on skin absorption rates, and this is why we preach showers and wipes and why they're so important. 300% more absorbent or more likely to be absorbed through the groin. The jaw angle is 93%, where your hood interface is. The forehead, 43%, also directly related to our hoods. Our scalp, 25%, and our back, 12% with a higher absorption rate. These numbers, if you look at these numbers, it'll talk about cancer rates. Our cancer rates in general as a firefighter are substantially greater than those of most Americans. Some are 2 times more greater, some are 1.5 times, but you can see those numbers as you read through those. Those are numbers that we're working and we've got to reduce. We've talked about this a little bit in our station visits and why we think it's so important that we keep our hood on from the time we get to the scene till ultimately to the time we leave. For every 5 degrees in skin temperature increase, you are likely to receive a 400% increase in absorption rate. Those carcinogens known to be present in soot aren't just sitting there, they're soaking in. So the hotter you get, the more carcinogen your skin absorbs. On this slide, we'll talk about what about cancer statistics for women, non-white, and volunteer firefighters. Unfortunately, there's very few studies available. Some address women firefighters and specific cancer risks. We know San Francisco for sure is doing a study based on cancer risk for women firefighters. We have little data about volunteer firefighters, and some data is incomplete as it relates to African Americans, but we know black men have the highest risk of prostate cancer according to the CDC in 2013. For more statistics like this, you can look at the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. 2 things on this slide, though, I'd like to point out. in comparison to other firefighters, the change of lung cancer diagnosis or death increases with the amount of time spent at fires. And the chance of leukemia death increases with the number of fire runs. So some of those we can change and some of those we can't. We can't necessarily adjust the calls we go to, but we can creatively adjust the time we spent on fires. What do we already do well? We know we have a world-class public safety occupational health center. We already have mandated yearly physicals. The department is almost completely tobacco-free, depending on your day to hire. We have an engaged and experienced well-fit staff, physical therapy and nutrition services available. We've had 2 sets of protective gear for a very long time now. We haven't had gear in sleeping areas in also a very long time. We have a diesel capture system when used correctly, works very well. We have an exposure reporting system that we encourage you to do, or the officers do after each event. And we refer to the Respiratory Protection Standing Order concerning overhaul 2017-003. We've talked about what we do well, and now we're going to talk about where do we go from here. So this is a multifaceted approach. Departments that are doing it well are doing all of the above. They have an all of the above approach. So we need to talk more about our healthy habits and our culture. Are we willing to change? We need to have a greater understanding of gross decontamination after the fire and what works better than other means. We need to talk from the scene and back. We need to talk about the clean cab. We're going to talk about the protective ensemble, and that's encompassing of all your gear. We want to talk about the scene as a hazmat and running it with hot, warm, and cold zones. Cleanup teams and shower within the hour, how we get you back to the station and cleaned up as soon as possible. Better management of the second set of gear and getting it clean. And then we want to talk about controlling the controllable, the diet, the exercise, and the sleep. And we'll touch a little bit on vertical exhaust on apparatus, what some other departments are doing actually very close to us. We want you to not let it go in one ear and out the other. So when we're talking about wearing your SCBA, wearing your hood, keeping it on for the duration, we really want you to take, heed that advice. We really think that's one of the most important things we could do to prevent our cancer risk. And another thing to consider is, dirty gear is not a sign of a seasoned firefighter anymore. It's a sign of a firefighter who's naive to the risk of what cancer presents. So there's no correlation of how well or how trained you are and how well you do your job or how well you perform on the fire ground. We're going to talk about a model, the Healthy Firefighter model, and this is an international model that is really all-encompassing, and I encourage you to look this one up. We need to give all our personnel the knowledge and the insight they require to reduce the incidence of contamination, simple, clear routines, and the organization will provide the necessary material and the opportunities for the personnel to carry out those. So the first thing I wanted to talk about here is defining the latency period. This one's really important. Cancer takes a really, well, not always, but sometimes a long time before it turns up, right? Most firefighters don't suffer from a serious occupational illness. However, for those it affects, it often takes a long time before the illness develops. So we need to define that latency period is one of the biggest reasons for the situation not changing, right? Particularly as many firefighters retire before they fall ill. We've already talked about it earlier in the slide about the median age being 57. Think about that and where that lines up about where you'll likely be retiring. Number 2, we want to talk about establishing routines. We want to talk about establishing simple routines that you do each time. Well, most of us will feel that we rarely work a significant fire, but we have to start considering that you're likely exposed to a large amount of contaminants through numerous small fires. It adds up. It's tempting to skip decon and healthy habits under poor conditions, tired or raining or snowing or things like that when it's really cold, or small events. If you allow that premise to happen, you're accepting that it's either no big deal or it was just at one time. So we really want to push that we establish a simple routine and we do it all the time. Our department provides many of these tools already. Others cost little or nothing to adapt. So we're asking you to be the change. Those who show respect for themselves quickly win the respect from others. We're gonna dive in a little bit to gross decontamination here, and I always like to say it's simple, it's easy, and it's often. So we should be doing this all the time. I know We're getting varying degrees of participation. We're very encouraged how it's starting to pick up. We like where it's going, but we want to talk about how we could even make it better. Most studies confirm that wet soap decon is the best. Right? It's the most effective to reduce the contaminants that are likely left on you. So the most effective, wet soap reduces it by 85% according to studies, and this is simply water with dish soap using a brush and water. Dry brush, just brushing off the contaminants or the particulates, it reduces it by 23%, and even less likely or very that it doesn't do well is an air-based method where they used a modified leaf blower and it only reduced it 0.5%. The wipes, while effective, don't replace a thorough shower and hand washing as soon as possible. So, and we like that, to think about these numbers, detected on hands, 76% of the PAHs were left, the neck 41%, and the wipes help reduce those levels by 54%. There's also some reference material there we encourage you to look up. Staying on gross decon, we talk about, presently we only monitor for five chemicals that we know of, right? We have our meters, our 5 gas meters. We know there's over 200 known cancer-causing chemicals that are released during a fire. And we take 2 of these as an example that are supported through science, but we don't monitor for. And really the numbers we want you to take to heart here and to concentrate on, look at the IDLHs and the short-term exposure limits, right? Benzene has a 1 part per million short-term exposure limit. Formaldehyde has a short-term exposure limit of 0.1, and the IDLH of formaldehyde is also really low. I think the things we have to consider here is the fire retardant chemicals that are used are constantly changing and only making this more difficult for us. So this is something we have to closely monitor and stay in tune with science. We talk a little bit about the clean cab concept, and we make note to say the Fairfax way. There's many ways, many departments doing different things. When we talk about this, we want a common sense approach combined with our needs, our engineering, our technology, our subject matter experts in apparatus, all those type of divisions that are brought in. We want to talk about either are we going to remove the gear from the cab, are we going to remove it just long enough to get it clean and then bring it back in? The same thing with the SCBA. There's different ways they're doing it. You'll see down below, Pierce and E1 have their own initiatives. Some departments have made videos on how they're doing it. We need to, what has to happen, we need to find the right balance for Fairfax County Fire and Rescue. We're telling you to be the change. There's a ton of smart people in this department that can help us work through this in a creative way. The protective ensemble. So this is your gear. We have to start exploring new technology to aid in the reduction of the particulates. There's departments and manufacturers of personal protective equipment that are putting particulate blocking matter within their gear now. We need to start testing that. We need to start testing other manufacturers. We need to stay in the know. We can't be really locked into one manufacturer, but we have to rely on the experts. We're not them, but that they are out there. We are staying consistent with the tactical athlete approach that reduces the weight but provides you the comfort and the protection that you need. And other departments very close to us are talking about cleanable SCBA components. Where's technology taking us, and how we can get those cleaned the fastest. We're going to show you 2 videos. One's going to be from the Illinois Fire Service Institute and another one from Miami-Dade regarding your personal protection and our decontamination efforts. We'd like you to watch those. They're short, and we think they provide a wealth of information.
Hi, I'm Jake Stewart, research scientist here at the Illinois Fire Service Institute, home of IFSI research. Today in part 2 of our series, we're going to talk about ways to minimize your exposures on the fire ground when doffing any personal protective equipment. This video is going to focus on removing the hood after leaving the fire building or after completing on-scene decontamination. And we'll be using the same simulated exposures that we did in part 1. Now that the firefighter has removed his gloves, as we demonstrated in our previous video, he then needs to remove the rest of his PPE. Typically, this would mean pulling down his hood, removing his facepiece, and finally removing the hood. By pulling the hood down, his neck is exposed to the contaminants on the exterior of the hood and collar. To minimize exposures, the firefighter stays on air while removing the air pack. He then takes off his coat carefully, trying to minimize any contamination inside the coat. The next step is pulling the hood over the facepiece. He needs to make sure that he grabs the outside to avoid any contamination. Finally, after hitting the donning switch, he can remove the facepiece, hood, and regulator in one piece. By changing how the hood is removed, the firefighter can limit his exposure to fireground contaminants. In situations where the firefighter will need to keep his or her coat on, or may need to redon the mask and hood, this process may not be feasible. Recently, there have been advances in hood technologies. While they show promise to protect us from exposures during the firefight, we run the risk of defeating those advances once we pull the hood down around our necks. We understand that not all firegrounds are the same, and you may not be able to perform this procedure every time, but it should be implemented whenever possible. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe.
Research has taught us that smoke and the products of combustion from today's fires are more toxic than they have ever been, and exposure to these substances has been associated with negative health effects as well as the development of many types of cancers. Wearing personal protective equipment and decontamination have proven to be the most effective methods for protection from these harmful substances. Decontamination should take place at the incident scene as well as back at the station by taking a shower. Personnel will not hydrate or consume food until the on-scene decontamination is complete and they have reported to rehab. Now, we will review how on-scene decontamination works.
Ladder 29 driver set up for decon. Ladder 29 unit, you're going to be the decon unit.
The decon area will be established by the incident commander.
Ladder 29 driver set up for decon.
Set up by the suppression driver. And identified with a cone. Connect the reducer to the discharge and the hose to the reducer. Flake out the hose and connect the nozzle. Supply the line with idle pressure. When you exit the fire structure, stay on air and report straight to the decon area. As personnel arrive at the decon area, a determination needs to be made as to the firefighter that has the least amount of air because he will be decontaminated first. Ensure that the Velcro on the collar area of the bunker gear is secured. Loosen the shoulder and waist straps on the SCBA of the firefighter that will be decontaminated. The firefighter being decontaminated will lean forward and the helmet will be briefly rinsed. The firefighter will stand up straight and hold his arms out to the sides while being rinsed with water front and back from the collar line down. Next, working from the collar line down to the boots, using a soft bristle brush and the soap and water mixture that was prepared by the engine driver, the firefighter will be scrubbed and then rinsed with water. After completing gross decontamination, personnel may go off air and remove their PPE, removing as much gear as possible prior to removing the fire gloves. Fire gloves should then be removed, avoiding as much skin contact as possible with the exterior of the gloves. After removing all of the bunker gear, personnel will use department-provided decontamination wipes to clean their face, neck, hands, and other areas of their skin.
We'll talk briefly about the scene as a hazmat and how we can work this like a hazmat into hot, cold, and warm zones. Simply, the cold zone is an area not affected by the products of fire. PPE and SCBA are not required here. Command, medical, rehab, and stage units are normally deployed here. The warm zone's close enough to the hot zone, but where rapid development towards your PPE can be made. And SCBA is not on air. However, as soon as conditions change, you either do two things. You move to the cold zone, or you put your SCBA on. On-deck companies like the safety officer, the RIT, and gross decon happens here. And the hot zone should be self-explanatory, but this is in the IDLH, but it can be outside or inside. And if you're in the products of combustion, PPE and SCBA on air is required. This could be implemented today at zero cost. This is you watching out for yourself and moving away from where the hazard is. We'll talk a little bit about cleanup teams and shower within the hour. This is something that's creatively going on across the country. Some of it's really close to here. In Henrico County does something similar to this. And Jacksonville, Florida has a policy in place, I think, since 2010. And as a best practice, crews should be sent home first for a personal shower and uniform changed, as soon as possible. We know that's difficult based on placement and some of the needs, but we have to work with our battalion management teams to try to get those units back to the station and clean as soon as possible. The battalion management teams want to do what's best for you. There's no doubt about that, but we have to come to them with the resources and how we're going to fix that and how we can accomplish that. There's many ways for you to engage with the community after you get clean. So whether we have to deploy smoke alarms or do smoke alarm checks or general public education within the community after the fire, we can do that after we're clean. Thing to consider here is what works for other departments might not work the same here. Again, we're problem solvers. This department in general is full of problem solvers. Our greatest asset is you. Let's figure this out. We'll talk a little bit about the PPE management. Currently, we have annual and out-of-cycle cleaning by the Gear Center. We know PPE is prohibited in living spaces. Everyone's provided with 2 full sets of gear. We've got a field inspection program where you can reference the SOP, and we have started our gross decon efforts at different success rates on incident scenes. Things we want to talk about in the PPE management and considerations is our gross decon. We want to move to where our gross decon is done on air. We want to be able to bag our contaminated gear while on the scene, send it back, not obviously in the cab, no contaminated gear in the cab. We want to work on a sustainable hood and glove exchange program. There's obviously more to come with that with our new hood study that's going on. Regular hood washing. We want you to wear gloves and proper PPE when you're working with contaminated gear. Wash gear after each exposure per the manufacturer's recommendations. We want to work to get fire wipes back on all units, and then we want to have a serious conversation about putting extractors in fire stations, either at the station level, the battalion level, or something similar. Again, that's going to have to be creatively how we're going to work through that. We talked earlier about controlling the controllable, the diet, the exercise, and the sleep. I've talked to Dr. Stewart about this. He believes the sleep portion is maybe the elephant in the room here, but we know the diet and the exercise are also equally important. We have non-preventable causes. There's non-preventable causes of cancer, some stuff that we can't really change. Sleep deprivation, emergency exposures, we need to run the alarms, we have to go there and do our job, and genetics. But there are preventable causes of cancer. These are controllable, can be implemented, or it just takes personal responsibility, right? No tobacco use. We got to work to reduce our obese or overweight population. Insufficient physical activity. We've got a great, well-fit staff that is working and always creatively working to get everyone involved. We need to work better on that. Our diets, our poor dietary habits, and we'll talk about our exposure to ultraviolet light from either sun or tanning devices and how we're always at risk for that. We talk about minimizing our non-preventable factors and eliminating our preventable factors. Some of the statistics from WellFit or some of the information they gave us, older adults who lift weights are 25% less likely to develop colon cancer than those who do not. I think you can think about working out in general. It helps. Weightlifting may particularly benefit for lowering the risk of colon cancer, which is the second leading cause of cancer death among men and women. 30% of all newly diagnosed cancer can be reduced by diet and exercise. So we work on controlling or minimizing the non-preventable and eliminating the preventable factors. And we wrap it up. It's staying consistent with the theme of the 2019 Firefighter Safety Stand Down. We need to reduce our exposure. It's everyone's responsibility. It's not just the safety officers. It's not just the battalion management team. It's not just the unit officers. You have a stake in your personal responsibility. Right? This is our turn to leave this place better than we found it and build your legacy. And as they show here, one brick at a time. We need to make it better for the next generation. The next part we're going to talk about is a Q&A. We're going to cover some questions that we pulled from the SurveyMonkey results. We had a ton of questions. We know they're important to you, so we are going to get to all those answers. We're going to do some of those, the answers to those questions now. The rest we're going to answer at a later time through many different means, but we'll try to ensure that we get you the answer to your question.
Good question. Risk factors for cancer are poor diet, a sedentary lifestyle, which leads to obesity, genetics, and poor sleep. Health Programs is committed to and continues to bring these issues to your attention at your annual physical, where you will talk with a doctor, reference family history, review your blood work, which has numerous markers for cancer, and complete a Hemocult and skin cancer screening. Our WellFit staff continues to schedule FMAP, which brings attention to your personal fitness, fitness nutritional circuits, and nutritional talks. And our behavioral health peer support team completed a campaign on sleep and good sleep habits. Our OHC, WellFit, and behavioral health staff are always available if you have any questions.
Sleep disorders, fragmented sleep, circadian rhythm disruption is certainly a very important topic in the fire service. It may be one of the factors that's a common factor in the medical concerns that we have, including cancer and heart disease. The mechanism by which disrupted sleep affects us is probably through decreasing levels of melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone in your blood that has 3 specific cancer-fighting qualities. Also, at night when you're sleeping, the repair of your DNA is much more efficient than during the day. So if you eliminate the nighttime sleeping, you eliminate or you minimize a lot of the DNA repair. So anyway, having said that, yes, this is a very important topic. The take-home message, if you can, is try to maintain some sort of a day-night circadian rhythm. If that means lowering the lights in the station at night, if that means taking a quick nap during the day, then that's all good, healthy medical advice.
Thank you. That's a great question. We realize there's not a consistent effort performing gross decon after incident scenes or after working fires. We realize that's an important question to you. You're just the type of person we're looking for to help us change the culture. Part of that is from talking to other departments that are trying to initiate or get these programs started. They find that given the personnel, the knowledge and the insight, the routine and the flow, and the tools helps lead to greater responsibility and more buy-in. We know there's not one policy that will fix the apathy that we have, but we're working on that. The safety section will be rolling out gross decon kits shortly. This can be rolled out directly by you at your station with minimal cost, and you can get this started today.
When we come to that 12-year part, that's all about negotiating with our lawmakers. We have to lobby that. If we were to go in and say what cancer should be covered 3 years, 4 years, 5 years on the job, there's a lot of data behind it that shows, well, maybe that cancer didn't come from our profession. Maybe this person had something, whether it was in their genetic makeup. So 12 years is where we're at. We're constantly trying to lower that, and we're constantly lobbying to make sure that our cancer coverage, the types of cancers are also covered and increased. The question is, after you retire and then you're diagnosed with cancer, how many years are you covered for? And the answer is 5 years. 5 years. And that's why it's extremely important to keep visiting OHC. It's one of the best benefits we have is our Occupational Health Center. World-renowned, great staff. Please, for our retirees and those getting ready to retire, visit OHC as soon as you retire and for years following that.
The need for gear cleaning after an incident will vary depending on the level of exposure. And our current policies actually give the personnel the ability to send their gear in for an out-of-cycle cleaning at any time without any question. So, even the reminders that are sent in by the safety officers, they actually mentioned out-of-cycle cleaning. And it's really our responsibility to be compliant with the current policies. So again, it's ultimately up to us our health and safety is up to us.
The Gear Committee is currently testing some new hoods, new NFPA standard hoods that have a vapor barrier. This vapor barrier is basically a filter that keeps the carcinogens off of our skin better than the old hoods. As part of the testing this process, we're trying to figure out which hood will be best suited our department, and hopefully we'll be able to make a recommendation as to how to go about getting these hoods cleaned and exchanged in the near future. That will be all part of what goes into the study and the results that come out of that. But that is one of the things that the committee is taking into consideration, and we're looking into the possibility of that happening.
The wood and materials that we use inside of the burn can are specified by the manufacturer and are based on the manufacturer's recommendations. It's important to note that any type of manufactured material, such as plywood, fiberboard, or OSB, all contain materials that are known to produce formaldehyde or off-gas formaldehyde or other carcinogens. We utilize the OSB based upon other risk factors. There's factors in exterior grade plywood that cause popping or spalling of the wood, and also make the burn conditions exceed what we need those conditions to be within the can. The OSB is simply the best fit. What we do as an alternative or as a measure to reduce those impacts on our members is the gross decon immediately after burning in the can, and also the quick cleaning of the gear, just ensuring that our exposure is minimized, you're in full PPE, and your time within the can are limited of duration.
Reduce your exposure. It's everyone's responsibility.